Salt of the Earth Farm Stories. Step into the world of farmers from diverse backgrounds across Australia. Through intimate interviews, host Darren Grigg delves into farming practices, traditions, and the challenges farmers face in nurturing the land.
The station's 100 kilometres by 40 kilometres, so you don't get exactly the same rain event over the entire station. Things will come in waves. We're playing a long game.
In this episode, we're heading deep into Central Australia, into the heart of cattle country. Lyndee Severin made her way from the east coast to desert country on a motorbike and landed on a 1-million-acre station. She's been rolling with the punches ever since. No 2 days are ever the same, and she wouldn't have it any other way. In part A of our chat, we talk about the remarkable Murray Grey beef breed, bulls that prefer another activity over a fight, and what it takes to produce high-quality protein in some of the most remote and varied country in Australia, spanning 22 different land types across a single station. Lyndee shares how corporate knowledge in this world doesn't sit in the office. It lives within the cattle. We dive into mustering, calf training, and the long game decisions that shape the herd, including some tough calls on temperament. We hear how she works the yards with calm authority, who's really the boss out there, and what happens when a scrub bull hits the scene. And as Lyndee puts it, everybody just goes up, don't ask why. Just a heads up, this interview was recorded right in the thick of it, in the staff kitchen of a busy, working outback station that also hosts tourists. So yes, you'll hear some background noise, but that's just part of the charm, because life out here doesn't stop. Let's jump in. Good morning, Lyndee.
Good morning, Mr. Darren.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. We've been looking forward to this.
Can you tell me, where are we today?
So we're at Curtin Springs Station in the Northern Territory, so on the Lassiter Highway. We're 360 k's southwest of Alice and 85 k's east of Esrock Resort.
So what are you running here and how big is it?
Curtin Springs is a diversified business, so we've got the cattle station as well as the tourist side of the business. The station is just over 1 million acres, 1,026,980 acres.
That's massive.
So yeah.
From where I'm from.
Most of it's just noughts though, and Ash always says it's gaffer country, great amounts of fuck all. So, but you actually need that size up here to be viable. So we're slightly, if you just looked at averages across the pastoral estate, we're slightly bigger than the average, but we are in probably more marginal country than quite a lot of them. So you need this size to be viable. You can't really be viable at anything smaller.
Are there corners of the country here that you've never been to?
Of course there are.
Are there? So you can just go exploring on your own place?
Yeah, all the time. And it's really interesting because every time you're out on the station, you see something different. Really? You're seeing something either new or you're seeing it what it looks like today. You know, we had 3 mil of rain yesterday, so what's nice and shiny and bright today? You know, where are the grasses up to? Where are the trees up to? Where are the cattle? You're seeing something different every single time you go out onto the station. And there are places that, you know, on 1 million acres, you cannot say you've set foot on every single square inch. So there are places that we go to more regularly and there are places that we don't go to as often. And there are places that we've never been.
Wow. So you're running beef?
Yep.
And what breed?
So we're below the tick line. So most of Central Australia has British bred cattle rather than Brahmans or a Brahman cross. And we run predominantly Murray Greys.
The Murray Grey, they originated down near me, I think, in Tallangatta.
Yeah.
And they do okay up here.
Amazingly well. Ash has always loved the Greys, and there's a number of traits. So they're very placid, very calm, which means they just roll with the punches. And you've seen a few things here this morning where we just, we all just have to roll with the punches.
I've been here 15 minutes in the kitchen with you. There's been a lot happening.
So it's about that, let's just get on with it. They're happy to walk, and out here they need to walk to be able to get something to eat and drink. Happy to mother up somebody else's calf.
Wow.
which is a really important trait out
So
here.
they'll sense that calf from another mother needs some help.
Or the calf is brave enough,
Yeah.
clever enough to go looking for a drink wherever it can. We had a few years ago now at one of the boars, we had this little calf, it was only quite a little calf, just always seemed to be at the yards. Mum was nowhere around, but this calf, and it was perfectly healthy, it was perfectly fine. And we happened to be there one night as cows were coming in to get a drink. So our cows don't necessarily drink every day. We run a longitudinal herd, so we've sort of, cows may only drink once a week. But when they get to the yards, they're thirsty. So they head straight to the trough, put their head in the trough. So this little calf was just latching on to whoever was standing at the trough. So cows are taking a drink and the calf's taking a drink, and then the cow would go, oh, hang on a minute, you're not mine. And he'd just move on to the next one.
Smorgasbord for the calf.
Yeah. So, and we've seen cows nanny up. So because they're not drinking every day, they could be walking out 2 or 3 days feeding, walking back 2 or 3 days feeding. So what will happen is that one cow, Helen says that she's a bit thirstier today. So she'll leave her calf with the little cohort and she'll head back in and get a quick drink if they're all not moving. So the other cows will look after the calf.
She can set that calf with another few cows.
Yeah.
And that calf will know then to just stay there.
Yeah. And, every animal's different, every situation is different, and you can't assume that that's going to happen with every set of animals all the time. But that placid nature in the Murray Greys means that there are those opportunities for those things to happen. They're also a stockier animal. You don't get paid for the leg they cut off at the abattoir. Big animals need a lot of space and a lot of feed just to be able to get through the day. So you don't need that an increased baseline to be able to survive. And then at yield level, we tend to get a slightly higher yield at carcass weight. And the other trait that's really important, and I'm going to swear again, is that the bulls would rather fuck than fight.
Right.
So you want cows in calf.
Yeah.
You don't want bulls just proving how big their balls are by fighting with each other. So there's a number of traits. Not any one of those is a standout, but you add them together and it works for us.
So quite a bull, that'll end up with quite a calves.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, it's a trait that the Murray Greys have about being quite placid. And it just means that they'll cope with some of those things that need to happen.
Interesting. And I like the way you put that. Now, Lyndee, can we go back to the start? When did you arrive here and how did you get here? I believe there's an interesting story behind this.
So more than fingers and toes ago. And I came in the door to go to work, just like most good wives and husbands are found. And I often say I then worked out that I could train Ash. So I thought if I could train him, I'd better keep him.
You drove up here for work on the station to work with cattle? Or?
No, I came up to run the office. So I arrived on a motorbike. So I had a motorbike and a trailer.
Really?
Yeah.
A road bike?
Yeah.
What sort was that?
Yamaha 1100 Virago, which is down in the shed.
You still got it?
Yeah.
Oh, you just don't get it out anymore?
No, haven't been on it for a while now. Yeah. So you often go out to the guys that are on the bikes out at the petrol bowser and stand behind them and sniff the leather. But
that's a big trip because you came from where?
I had been in Wollongong before that.
Yeah.
Had a midlife crisis, for want of a better term, and I had been working in the public sector at quite a senior level. And when I was told that I needed to lie for the minister, I decided I didn't need to do that. So I packed up the motorbike and headed off into the sunset, and then turned up here to go to work.
So you had most of your belongings on that little trailer?
Yeah. I had a small storage unit that we've since sorted out, but so day-to-day living stuff was all on the bike.
And you've grown a family here?
Yeah.
How many kids?
Well, we've got 6 between us. Ash, we didn't have any together, but we classify all of them as ours.
Yeah. Fantastic. And where are they now?
As far away from here as they can get. No, they're all scattered. They're all in their 40s now.
Yeah.
So we've got one in South Australia, one in Victoria, one in Darwin, got two in Alice at the moment. So yeah, they're scattered around.
I was lucky enough to meet Amy,
Yeah.
one of your daughters. And look out, listeners, there's a fascinating podcast with Amy coming up soon, and it's all about Amy and the alpacas. So going back to beef, Lyndee, beef in Central Australia, it's not an easy task, or is it?
Well, you can answer that both ways. The country produces amazing protein. You know, it is what this country does at its prime. Is it always easy? Of course not. You know, we're trying to produce food in the desert, and so there are some challenges around that. But the quality of what we can produce is simply amazing. This is not the country where you can grow carrots, or you've bought me some potatoes. It's probably not the best place to be able to grow potatoes. And the challenge that we have is that our water quality and quantity doesn't give us the opportunity to irrigate. There are some places in Central Australia that do, but they've got a much better water supply than what we have. So it's about only fighting the battles that you think you can win. So growing beef in Central Australia, growing beef in the NT, but Central Australia is quite different to the top end. We've been doing it in this region for a long time, and we've been doing it really well. So Central Australia predominantly has the British bred cattle, Hereford Angus Shorthorns, and as I said, we've got the greys. So they're a different part of the beef chain to what the top end cattle are. The desert country is hugely productive, or can be hugely productive, if you look after it and if you treat it with some respect.
Tell me about that respect. You don't put a lot of inputs on it, do you? Like you're not putting chemicals on it. You're letting it happen naturally.
Yeah. So there's no, you know, we don't have any improved pasture. We rely entirely on the native grasses. We don't fertilise. How on earth can you fertilise 1,000,000 acres? And
tell me about those native grasses. You might have, half a dozen different species, or are there more?
Dozens and dozens.
Really?
Yeah. And it's always amazing. A lot of people drive through this country and you'll have some people go, oh, it's just so boring. Like there's just nothing to see. That's not our experience, and that's not how we see it. And if you actually took a breath and looked, then you would see that in every square metre, particularly at the moment where we've had a couple of years of good regular rain, so we've got amazing ground cover at the moment, there's so much diversity in that plant life. So whether it's the grasses or the shrubs or the trees or the flowers or the herbage or the succulents, there's a mixture of all of those things. And we've got 22 different land types, and each land type grows a different combination of all of those plants. But they all need different rain events, for example, to mature. So you've got some plants that will grow on multiple land types, but each combination needs a different rain event because the chemistry is different.
22 land types on one farm sounds a lot to me, but we are talking 1,000,000 acres.
Yes.
So those different species, those plant species that are out there and the native grasses, will a cow just go for one plant that they're after, their favourite, or will they get a little bit of each to what their gut needs?
Mother Nature does an amazing job because not everything matures at the same time. So you've got a rolling smorgasbord. So and it depends on the rain event as to what you're going to get. So you don't get everything at the same time. And we're not going to get the same thing all over the station. So the station's 100 kilometres by 40 kilometres. So you don't get exactly the same rain event over the entire station. So things will come in waves. A little rain event's going to give you this type of response. A follow-up rain event's going to give you a different response. So I often liken the landscape to a smorgasbord. If there's prawns on the smorgasbord, you're going to take them, and then you're going to eat the roast chicken. And then at the end, we're down to coleslaw. So the cows need to be able to move through those cycles, which is part of why we run what I've talked about, the longitudinal herd. So we're never culling cows on age. We will always cull on temperament. But if you stepped into that best practice of taking out an older cow and putting in a younger one to maintain that efficiency, best practice in all animal husbandry all over the world, in all species. But if we did that, given our rain cycle is 7 to 10 years, it would only take 2 rain cycles where we don't have a single cow who knows what to do when it rains.
Yeah.
So all that corporate knowledge and that business wisdom sits in the animal. It doesn't sit in the office. So the most important trait we have in an animal is that they can survive. So it doesn't matter what those breeding traits are, or what the calving ratio is, or the first time heifer dates. No, none of those things matter if the animal's not alive or has to be hand fed. So the first trait is that they actually have to be able to survive, and they have to do it on their own. So we don't feed. The only time we will feed an animal is if they're in the yard waiting to go on a truck.
Yeah. So this corporate knowledge, that's like your leaders, and you want the leaders of the pack to show the others how to survive.
It's certainly in the leaders, but it's also in the rest of the herd as well, because you're not going to have a cow that won't do anything unless something shows her. But all herd animals have a hierarchy, and you're going to have those smaller social groups. So even if you've got a paddock that might have 200 or 300 cows in it, they're going to be in their little social groups, just like high school. So there were people that you sat with at lunchtime, people that were your friends, and others that even at your 20, 30, 40-year reunion, you still have got nothing to say to them. So, and herd animals are all the same. So each animal will be able to go and find some things, but you're also going to have those leaders that will head off in a direction and others will follow. But all of the animals need to have some of that innate ability to be able to find something to eat. So that longitudinal herd also means that you're not getting to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the cows are going, oh, we've got to go back to water, which means you need to have more watering points. You need to have everything else, or more infrastructure to be able to cover the area.
Yeah.
So this way means that animals can move very gently into the landscape and disperse very thinly over a large area and make the most of all of that area, rather than being, what time is it and I need to get a drink.
Yeah. And they'll see out their life here.
Yeah, we don't, we run quite a conservative number. So our perfect number is about 4,000 head, which means that we can run those older animals that some may say are unproductive. We're sitting at a table with nobody else, but, I'm the only one here who's not producing a live weaned calf every year. But that doesn't mean that those animals don't have value. So the conservative number means you can keep that wisdom in the herd without having any impact on your total numbers. And our perfect world is that they get to curl up under a tree and go to sleep. They've provided, either by being productive and then after that having the knowledge. We're not going to penalise that. In our perfect world, they do see out their lives. If you've got a stupid cow, then that has to be removed, and so they get identified and then they go on a truck if we're sending to the abattoir or something. So you need to take out that stupidity. We're always going to cull on temperament because they upset the rest of the herd.
Yeah.
The good girls don't calm down the stupid one. The stupid one upsets more of the good girls. So, and Ash and I aren't 21 anymore, as our orthopaedic surgeon keeps telling us. So we can't run as fast or jump as high as we used to. So we need to be conscious of all of that. You don't want a cow that's going to put itself at risk and in danger of hurting itself or hurting us.
So how often would you get them into the yards and be looking at them, and do you preg test?
So we muster using water tracking. So we no longer use horses or helicopters. We simply use a one-way gate on our cattle yards. So all of our water is inside the structured cattle yards. So it's a very simple system, a door frame with 4 or 5 arms, and those arms simply sit closed and a cow pushes against them, fingers run down her body and close behind her. So the in-trap faces one direction, the out-trap faces the other direction. So that means that we can work a small number of animals at any point in time. So we're talking about Amy, she's going to be up again in a couple of weeks, and we'll be trying to do some cattle work. Might just set the homestead yards. We might just go over and do an hour over there. We might set 4 others if we've got the opportunity to do that. So because most of the time we control all of the water, we can do that cattle work all year. We're not defined to trying to do it in a short period of time in the dry season, where you need to have a lot of people and a lot of infrastructures to do a lot of work in a short period of time. We can do it quite differently to that.
Those cows will go through those fingers or that one-way gate, but then most of the time they know that they'll get out again.
They can just get out, the in-trap's in one place, the out-trap's in another, and all we need to do is block off the access to the out-trap when we want to trap. So we set the traps late in the afternoon and go back in the morning to see what's coming to get a drink.
And this yard will be 100 square metres, or how big's the yard?
Oh, well, the yards are all slightly different. Homestead Yard's got the biggest water yard. Most of the other yards, the working area of the yards is similar, but your water yards aren't as big. So we've got 8 working sets of yards across the station.
And how does the calf get used to it, going through that one-way gate?
Follows mummy. So what you want is that cow, she's just had this calf and she's gone, well, that was a bit tough, I might go and get a drink. So you want her walking into the yards to get a drink. That little calf, in the very first few days of its life, is only just going to follow mummy's feet, not interested in anything else. So he's going to follow her through the traps. And even if the traps touch him, he doesn't care. And when he lifts his head and goes, I'm a member of the world in my own right, then going through the traps isn't a strange thing. So mum needs to teach him from day one that's where she's going to get a drink, and also that she needs him to be looking to get a drink from somewhere else. So she might be feeding him, but he also needs to be able to get a drink somewhere. And we've seen cows pushing calves' heads into the troughs when it's been hot and hard, just the same as we would if you've got a calf that you're trying to get to have a drink. So they need to be able to get a drink. She'll feed them, but they need to be getting a drink somewhere else.
And your water supply, that's from bore?
It's all bore water. We're not on the artesian basin, but it's all bore water. Our water is all in the rock layers. So over the years, we've sunk 119 boreholes on the property. We can use 14 sites. Shallowest usable water at 9 feet, deepest over 400. Best flow rate is about 4,000 gallons an hour. Average is less than 1,000. And we found water at most of those bores, but we've got some bores that are 4 and 5 times saltier than the sea.
Right.
So just because you find water doesn't mean you can use it.
But how far apart will those bores be when one's got a heap of salt in it and one's fairly clear?
When we've found reasonable water, if you put a duplicate hole down within 5 metres, you've got a 50% chance of finding the same water source.
Yeah.
If you go to 6 metres, then you are back to the random chance of finding water.
You're joking.
So there's no rhyme or reason to where the water is. No geological, no what colour the flowers are, no what way the kangaroos point when they're doing a wee. Some of our bores are where they are because we couldn't get the drilling rig over the sand dune.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be over there, but it's here because we couldn't get any further.
That's just like a little seam in the rock somewhere that's receiving a certain type of water.
The geology in Central Australia is some of the oldest geology in the world, which has always been a stupid thing for me. The whole world's the same. But it just means that there's not been a lot of disruption to it for a long time. We don't have any volcanoes here that are creating new soil and new land. So over that millennia, those rock layers have all moved. So they used to be nice horizontal lines. They're not anymore. So they're underneath, it's all mixed up. So that's one of the challenges with things like the mining companies, where they say, trust us, we work for the mining company, we're not going to disrupt your water supply. Well, you don't know what the connectivity is. In some places in the world, you can say that the water coming out of this spring fell in New Guinea 4,000 years ago. We can't tell that, and we don't know what the connectivity is between the water sources, but all of our water is inside the rock layers.
Yeah.
So not on the artesian basin, not punching down into a big underground lake. So access to water is pretty challenging.
You're a wealth of knowledge, Lyndee. So with your water points, you've got troughs, and then when you want to move the stock, you'll turn that bore off or that trough off. How are you moving them?
So all of the yards water multiple directions. So you've, picture across, you've got 4 paddocks, for example. Those, and the yards are in the middle. So the yards are set up so that they can actually water multiple directions. So we would never turn water off, but you might open a different out track.
Yeah.
So they're coming in on one side and they're moving out on another side, because that watering point's actually watering more than just that paddock.
Yeah.
Here at the homestead, they're watering, 360 degrees. We don't have any structured paddocks that come off here, or most of the others have got multiple directions that they're watering.
Yeah.
So on the northern side of the station, where there are no paddocks though, a lot of that landscape is managed by the water, but in some dams. So we've got a big swathe of arid wetland across the middle of the station. The most productive land you'll ever see. We can fatten cattle faster there than a feedlot. Looks like crap, looks like nothing, but it's the most amazing country, but it's really quite fragile. So we manage that part of the station on dams. So when it rains and there's water in the dams, then the cattle will head back there. When the water starts to dry off, the cattle and the dams dry up, then the cattle will move away. So that water is turned off in your scenario.
Yes.
And the cattle then move back to the more permanent waters, but they do that themselves. We're not having to move them.
I was going to ask, when it rains, are they more harder to control? Because they'll go, I think last night you said they'll go 50 kilometres that way when there's little puddles in the ground.
Yeah, and if there's water laying in the landscape, they're going to go looking to drink the fresh rainwater out of the clay pen rather than the bore water. There's nothing surer than eventually it will dry up and they have to come back to the permanent water. The other thing is the succulents. So we've got a succulent plant, a pig face plant that is called paraculia. High quality feed. We talk about animals being as fat as a paraculia bullock. But if they're eating the paraculia, they don't need to drink. There's enough moisture in it that they don't need to drink. So
is that quite a sappy plant?
Yeah, so it's like your little pig face that you might grow in your garden, but it's full of water, high quality nutrients, but also full of water. So at the moment, up the top end of the station, there's quite a lot of paraculia. So we're having this regular rain, not huge amounts, but regular rain, and that's keeping some of that stuff going. So we've just redone a set of yards up there, improved the safety. It's a portable set of yards, but we've put in a sort of a permanent working area, and that's been done for a week now, and there's not been a single animal come into the yards.
Oh, really? So they're happy?
Because they're further out and probably at this point on some paraculia. We have to wait for it to dry up and for them to come back into water. But you need a bank manager who believes there's money in mud, and there is nothing surer than it's going to dry up. So it's just, well, what can we do in the meantime? Because there's always something else we can be doing.
How are you running the bores? Is that solar?
They're all solar now.
All solar?
Yeah.
And how are you monitoring them?
Physically, manually visiting them. They're all set up so that we could remote monitor them, but the challenge is about that communication. So if most remote monitoring in Australia is done on UHF, 10 Ks line of sight, we've done the numbers in that we would need more repeater stations on the station than what we had recording stations to be able to work UHF. And UHF doesn't have the bandwidth. So if we're doing it, we want to be able to take some pictures.
Yep.
So if it's not UHF, it's mobile. That's not going to work. Yeah. We don't have any mobile. We've got mobile service here at the homestead area, but certainly not over the station. Our preferred methodology would be VHF. And when they took the TVs out of the analogue stuff, that was supposed to free up a whole lot of that VHF bandwidth. But there's never been any research done in that bandwidth. So then that leaves a satellite. And we would need to put in individual satellite connections
Yeah.
at every point that we wanted. So could we do that? Yes. Is it viable at the moment? Do we need it that much? No. And you still need to do bore runs anyway. And your bore run is not just about checking the water in the trough. You know, you need to check what's in the tank and that the pumps work, but it's about everything else. What's happening? What are you seeing in that landscape? You know, as I said, we're seeing something different every day. So, you know, where are the cattle? Have you got a fence down somewhere? You know, what else are we seeing that we might need to be aware of? So the bore run is actually a lot more than just checking the water. And sometimes I need to run away from the phone. So.
Well, I was just wondering, actually, do you enjoy doing bore runs?
Yeah.
And say you're 50 kilometres down the other side of the property and something happens. How do you communicate?
VHF radio.
VHF,
So
yeah.
we've got a repeater on the top of Mount Connor, which gives us a 100k distance.
Right.
So if we're right up the top end of the station, you might need to find the top of the little ridge or the top of the sand dune, but it gives us 100k, and we get coverage across the whole station basically. So we've got, you know, a radio here in the radio room just off the office. We've got one in the office, one at our house, one in the shop. So our communication is VHF radio, so not satellite phones or any of that stuff at the moment. So.
And tell me about your rainfall. You were showing me a graph last night. We've had some spikes every sort of 10 years or so.
Yeah, so our rain cycle sort of long term works on a 7 to 10 year cycle. And then we'll have what we call a good season. And we define that good season as all of the possible plant varieties on those 22 different land types producing a seed. So we need a diverse range of rainfall events over an extended period of time to give us that good season. So 30 inches of rain in the January after Cyclone Tracy, giving us the highest recorded rainfall in a 12-month period, did not produce a good season.
Right.
15 to 20 inches, 2 to 3 times our average. And on the graph here, we'll see the green line average, but then the blue line is the 5-year average. They're all really quite blunt instruments because that on its own doesn't tell you very much. But you can see the difference between that green line and then what the blue line is when you're looking at average. Now, the last couple of years, if you looked at this graph, you're going, well, it's not the most rain you've ever had, but it's been regular.
Yeah.
And that's part of the equation. You can't have it all in one go. You grow different things in the winter. If we want grass, it needs to rain in the summer. We don't get any grass response. We had 20 mil a couple of weeks ago. No grass response out of that. Herbage and succulents.
Yeah.
But they're going to disappear when it gets hot.
Yeah.
The long-standing feed is the grass. And the benefit of the native grasses is that they will keep, on average, 60 to 70% of their protein or nutrition level when the plant's dead. So if you go to that dairy cow, nice soft rolling velvet green hills, but her grass is a mixture of grasses that have been planted to give her the best nutritional value possible in that climate. So those improved pastures, when that plant gets to maturity, you cut it and bale it and put it in the shed.
Yeah.
Capture the goodness, feed it to the animal at some point in the future. Because if you leave it in the paddock, as those plants die, they mostly end up with no nutritional value. Our native grasses, we can't cut and bale and put in the shed, but Mother Nature switches them off, puts them into that hiatus. So they will keep, on average, 60 to 70% of their protein or nutrition level, even when the plant's dead. So as you're driving around in the next couple of days, if the grass is nice and golden, still reasonably quality feed. If it's starting to turn grey, it's kicked into its oxidisation. So it's losing its nutrition value, but it becomes ground cover and it's holding the landscape together. And we all know if you've got ground cover, you're getting a much better response to your rainfall. So the plant may not be feed anymore, but it's just as important in the landscape. And the challenge, you're seeing the landscape, Central Australia, with more grass on it than Ash, who's 72, has ever seen in his entire life. There's a fairly big risk around fires now. And we can go from best grass ever seen to catastrophic drought conditions in a day, and then it might not rain again for a decade.
Yeah.
So, you always need to have your head in the place that says the 20 mil we got a fortnight ago, the 3 mil we got yesterday, the last rain for a decade. That's all we're getting. There's no more for a decade. Your heart might say, I'd like a little bit more, but your head's going to go, yeah, no. So that's where our planning has to be.
Right, so you've had a couple of regular years with rain. Do you now prepare, as you say, you could go into a decade of drought? You're living on the edge.
Well, and that's interesting because we play the long game. You're playing a long game. Visiting Amy in Peterborough, earlier this year and earlier last year at about the same time, and you've got tractors in the paddock and they're seeding, and that area's had the lowest rainfall ever recorded, and Ash is going, what on earth are they doing? Yeah. But a lot of these farmers have pre-sold crops. They have to put seed in the ground, but they're relying on something happening in the next couple of months, and Ash is going, like, we just couldn't do it. No. Emotionally, we couldn't do that. That would be much harder. We're playing a long game. Yeah. So you're planning for that stuff long term. So we're not changing the numbers that we think are our perfect number. We're not changing, how we manage the landscape, because all of that happens to be able to play that long game.
Yeah. And you won't destock in a drought.
No. You lose all that corporate knowledge.
Yeah.
So 2009-10, which were the last years, year 9 and year 10 of what was a 10-year drought, there were a lot of people who removed like 99.9% of their stock. And Ash is going, I don't know how we could do that, because in our lifetime now, we would never get that corporate knowledge back into the herd. So, run that conservative number, be able to run a longer time into a dry spell, make sure any of that good excess goes into the animal and into the landscape, replenishing the seed bank. Every shower of rain, 3 mil of rain yesterday is going to give you another germination, but it might not give you reproduction. You want to run that number that gives us the ability for those plants to always produce a seed. If the plant can, then you want it to replenish the seed bank, because we're not cutting and baling, but I'm also not seeding. So Mother Nature needs to do all of that and maintain that diversity in all of those plant varieties, because everything operates on a different cycle. Like, we've got one grass at the moment that I've been keeping an eye out for. We've had, good regular rain over the last 2 years. I've not seen bristlebrush grass. So although we're getting the good rain or regular rain, this grass isn't responding to that. I've not seen any in 2 years. And I hadn't ever really thought that was a grass that we got in the tougher times, until these last couple of years where I've gone, well, where is it? And it's gone, no, you're not seeing me until times get tough. And that's only one example. You've got all sorts of other things that operate that way as well.
So are you organic?
No.
You must be close.
Well, we operate organically.
Yeah.
We've just not done that certification. It's time to look at that again. But there have been two things in the organic stuff that have made it hard. One is baiting, but now the guidelines are, if you've got the tank yard at the bores, you can exclude those, so you could bait in that and not breach your organic. And the other one is access to organic hay. So
you do have to buy feed in sometimes?
Yeah. Well, we don't produce any. Yeah. We try and keep a little bit of hay on hand, so that if we're trucking, we've got hay, and we've got animals in the yard at the moment that we are feeding because they've come up from our AI program in Victoria. So we're trap training them now, teaching them how to use the water traps, but they're in the yards and we're giving them, obviously need to feed them while we're teaching them that. But that and when they're hopping on a truck is the only time we feed. Across the road at the moment near the yards is, $50,000 worth of hay that we bought a couple of months ago because we needed to get some and we couldn't get any locally. So on the organic stuff, none of the hay that's produced in Central Australia that we've got access to is organic.
Yeah. And tell me about the AI program.
2009, 2010, the end of that 10-year drought, we made the decision to cull the cow herd because we had a lot of very small, lightweight, small-framed cows in what's technically called a composite herd. So that just means mixed bred mongrel, whatever we could afford over the years. But we'd had 9 years and we'd had pretty tough time with feral camels. So were they like that because we had no fences left from the camels? Camels just took out all of the paddock fences. So things were in the wrong place at the right time, or because they had nothing to eat before or after they were born. So we took the opportunity to cull the cow herd. We sold 1,800 cows. Our agent at that point, Doc Cunningham, earned the title of Doc the Super Agent at that point because he sold cows that were really unsellable. And we bought 260 Murray Grey cows. We thought that was the opportunity to do that. And when we did that, there was 20 odd cows that were beautiful cows, but they weren't going to survive up here. And Ash is a Nuffield scholar. And when he did his Nuffield scholarship in the 80s, he actually brought home some Belgian blue semen. And he has always wanted to do that Belgian blue cross. So the Belgian blues have a double muscling. So it's about improving the muscle definition. Now, at one end of the spectrum, Belgian blue cows look like landrace pigs. Caesars, hand rearing, they've just this huge muscle structure. We don't want that. We can't use that. But we want to just improve that muscle definition. So 20 odd cows on agistment in Victoria that we were AIing with some of the Belgian blue semen. Some of the original stock Murray Grey semen, you were talking about where that all started. Well, we had some, Ash had some very early Murray Grey semen and then some contemporary semen. So we mix that up in the genetics and that gives us a trickle feed of genetics coming into the property. Instead of buying bulls, we're growing bulls and then bringing them up.
And that's down near Curtin somewhere,
isn't it? Yeah. So.
And how was that semen stored for how many years?
For a long time. So the guys that do that work, that do the AI work, also have storage options.
Is it frozen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's all frozen in nitrogen. You pay a 6-month fee to keep the semen safe, and interestingly, the Belgian blue semen that's from the 80s is still entirely viable.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And where are you up to now? You've got some easy calvers.
Yeah, so, when Ash chose that semen, it was on ease of calving and small birth weight, and we've never had any dramas. And even with those cows on agistment that are, a first cross, so they're half Belgian blue, there's never been any issues. And then by the time we get them up here and you've put that half genetic into the herd, you've got a quarter on the ground. So, we're certainly seeing it in the herd with that improved shape, that improved muscle definition. It's been a really important part of our program for a long time.
I can see you love animals and you're not using helicopters. There's not thousands of motorbikes getting around them. You're moving them very quietly and calmly in the way of water points. That would make the cow, its temperament better and quieter in the yards and easier to handle perhaps?
Usually, and as I said earlier, we cull on temperament. So if you've got an animal in the yard that's giving you a hard time, then she needs to be identified. One, so that next time she's in the yard, you're keeping a bit of an eye on her, but also she needs to be removed. And a lot of people will ask the question about, well, how do you know whether she's misbehaving? It's a bit like if you have to ask if you're in labour, then you're not.
Yeah.
So, if you have to ask, then you go, oh, maybe not. We wouldn't put in more than a dozen purple cull tags in a year, and we probably wouldn't do that many. So that level of misbehaviour is very obvious, and you can identify it very quickly. And you put the different coloured ear tag, and when we're killing, trucking to slaughter or whatever, then they're gone. All of those bits of the puzzle all add into the mosaic of what makes it work.
And when do you sell? Do you sell off age or weight?
So what we sell and when we sell is the decision is made by what we've got to sell and who's looking to buy what, and potentially whether the bank manager says we need to do something about cash flow. So we don't have the opportunity to go, second week in August, I'm going to sell, 300 milk and two-tooth 450 kilo steers, because we just may not have that. So we work with an agent, Steve Gaff in Alice Springs, and his job is to keep an ear out for who's looking to buy what. So he'll give us a call and go, I've got this sort of job coming up, might fit in with what you've got. Or we go to him and go, I need some cash flow. Who's looking for what? So sometimes that's direct to slaughter, and in a perfect world we'd like to sell finished animals directly to slaughter, but sometimes that's into the feed lot or backgrounders or finishers. So, sometimes the feedlots are just looking just to be able to finish 30, 45, 50 days and they're finished and turn them over. But then sometimes you've got others who don't potentially have the money to spend but have got some time. So I've got some grass I need to turn into protein and I've got a little bit of time, so I can buy a smaller, lighter weight, cheaper animal and give them the time to grow out. So we sell into all of those markets.
Is there a bit of excitement in the yard some days?
The whole plan is to have not.
More excitement.
The whole plan is to not. But saying that, of course, if you're in the yard and we're trapping particularly up the top end and you've got scrub bulls and stuff in the yard, then that creates a level of excitement, and you go, we spent decades trying to eliminate all of this stuff. So why is the most exciting day the one where we've got bulls chasing us up the fence? You have to be careful all the time. At the other end of the spectrum, it's actually really nice to work in yards that the cows know what they're doing. You've got the grandkids helping. You're able to get the work done, and there's no risk to anybody. But yes, there are adrenaline days when you're going. And you work the yards to that system. Yep. So if you're identifying if there's an issue with what's mustered in, you're keeping an eye on those animals as those animals are moving around, then it could be that we've got everybody out of the yards. Yep. Except, Ash or myself or, somebody that's getting that animal to a point where we've got control of it. So we're getting it in the crush. But until that point, in that last little bit, everybody's out of the yards, because they don't wait for you to take the photo. No. They can, I often put the time-lapse cameras up, and we had a situation a few years ago now where we had a big bull, and I've got that time lapse set on 1 second. So we're taking a photo every 1 second. And we had a big scrub bull come up the race, through the side of the crush and out again. And we were all everybody was out of the yards because we knew he was coming. So it's just that last little bit. But he came up the race, through the crush, out of the side of the crush, and disappeared again in less than a second because we didn't get him on the time lapse. Because we're going, that'll be interesting. He's not there.
That quick.
Yeah. Wow. So, you need to be very conscious of all of those things. So there are rules in the yards. Yeah. There are things.
And safety is number one. Yeah. And who's the boss, Lyndee?
Me. I'm the boss. I'm the boss. So I'm the boss in the yards. There are a number of rules. One of them is that we're not talking. I don't care what you had for breakfast. All eyes on me. I'm not going to stop and go, now, have you gone and done your bushweed? Have you put some more sunscreen on? Have you had your bite of mandarin? Are we all ready to go?
Come on, Lyndee.
Yeah. No. All eyes on me. When I'm ready to go, then we go. And everybody has, you've worked in yards. Everybody ends up in their place. There's no chatter. Voices are for safety and direction. And there's commands You know, there are things that we say that everybody then follows, and they're very simple, you know, things like, you know, up. Everybody just goes up. Don't ask why. Don't look around. By the time I've said, you know, Ash or Darren or whatever, up, it's too late. So somebody's just screaming up, everybody goes up. Find out what happens. You know, stop. Everyone has the right to yell stop. And stop means that there's something going on that, you know, you individually haven't got control on. So everybody stops. Just shut the gate that you're on, everybody stop. And that's about, you know, just we need to sort something out. And then block is the other one that we use. You know, block, block, block just means everybody shuts their gate because something's coming faster than it should potentially. So there's, you know, really only a couple of commands that we raise our voice for, and the rest of the time it's quiet, because you have to be able to hear.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to be listening for what's potentially going on, because if an animal's starting to come at you, you can hear it. But it is, you know, we all need to go home at the end of the day.
So if someone was standing on the edge looking at their mobile phone, they wouldn't last a second, would they?
Well, you don't have your phone with you.
No.
So, you know, I use the phone. We use the phone to record things, take photos and records and all of that stuff. But we don't have the mobile reception on most of the stations.
Good.
So there's no point.
That's a wrap for Part A with the incredible Lyndee Severin. What a ride, from calm cattle handling to scrub bull chaos and everything in between. But we're not done yet. In Part B, we slow things down a little bit and get a bit deeper. Lyndee shares what it's like to find space to breathe in such a full-on life. We talk fire, drought, resilience, heartbreak, connection to the land, and the quiet magic of her husband Ash's bond with animals. It's raw, it's real, and not to be missed. In this episode, we also heard about her daughter Amy. So there's an exciting, colourful episode with Amy coming soon. So stick around, Part B with Lyndee is coming up.